G'day everyone, welcome back. I'm Todd, this is Toxic Garage Customs. So right now, about to get back into the International and the brake booster mounting. On my last video, I did put up a little bit of a comment. I made a mistake. I'm wondering if anyone worked out what the mistake was. You'll find out shortly enough, but have a think about it when you watch that video. I made an error, which was pretty obvious when I think about it, but I missed it. So luckily had time to gather my thoughts, and we'll fix it at the end of the day. As I said in my last video, this is sort of a mock-up stage, so it doesn't really matter. Errors are just improvements waiting to happen. So I'm just going to flip the camera around because I just want to show you this truck again. How cool is that? How cool is a side opening bonnet? If I haven't shown you before, this bonnet can open from one side or the other. The latch that I mentioned in the last video, this one here, that is in the way of the booster, is one of the pivot points, latching points for the hood, so hopefully I can still get the hood to work this way. But I like that. I reckon that's a really cool little feature of this truck. Anyway, got to jack it up so I can pull that latch off, and then I'll show you my mistake. Okay, got that bracket out of the way. Excuse me. Got that bracket out of the way, so we've got some more room for the booster. Now, to show you my mistake. Now, the mistake that I made was in regards to the pivot point for my booster. Well, I guess the pivot point, or where the push rod comes through. Now, it was only after I was sitting thinking about what to do next that I realised that, hang on, that's never going to work. So if you want something to pivot and to push a rod, then they can't come off the same point, because if this pedal swings from that point there, and as I was planning to do, or as I mistakenly was planning to do, to have this bolt come through the booster, then when you move the pedal, it wasn't going to do anything. And by now, if you've ever done anything like this, you've worked out what the problem was. That pin there is what attaches to the booster. So when you put your foot on the pedal, where I'm holding stays in the same place. So therefore the booster has to move forward. Bit hard to do this. Bit hard to do this while I'm trying to hold a camera. So this point stays where it is. So when you put your foot on the pedal, then the push rod moves in. Whereas where I mistakenly had lined it up for it all to come off here was never going to work. I know that. I've done this enough times before that it was just a stupid error. So what I need to do is I need my pedal height to be at the same position that I wanted it to be, 90 millimeters off the floor. So it stays where it is. It means my booster location needs to move down on the firewall by this distance just here, the difference between where I had measured from and here. So what that means is that the hole that I drilled in the firewall is too high. And looking at that distance, I'll measure it in a moment, it's probably about 60 mil too high. So this whole part here needs to move down. Now obviously going to run into an issue here and so on, but that's not a drama because I'll put a plate over that later. I'll have a mounting point. So what I believe I need to do is redo this whole thing down probably about that distance down here. So that's what I'm about to do, about to try and put the hole in the right spot. Now if this is something that I want to repair to make it look seamless later, well that's okay because I kept the piece that I drilled out. But I'll probably end up putting a flat plate there, as I've said. So I've just been having a play around off camera to have a look at the position. Now this is the holes, or this is the location that we had the booster in the first place, so I haven't changed anything. And the column as it is coming through. Now what I believe I need to do is relieve a little bit of metal out of the firewall to get the column to be able to drop down a bit. In comparison to the location on a standard HQ or H series Holden, I believe that the steering shaft needs to sit down a bit lower. So my intention is, so I can leave it where it is up here. I think the height of it in comparison to the dash looks okay, but down here what I need to do is behind that bracket, you'll remember the panel that I took out, a bit hard to show you, but at this point here, this line here, I'm going to come down about 50 mil, just cut some metal out of there, just so I can drop the column down, because what it actually appears in the photos that I'm looking at of Holden's is that, contrary to what I was trying to do, the steering column doesn't come down in a straight line. It actually comes down from the dash and then changes angle a bit at this joint. So I'm going to work with that because I believe that I need to lower it so that I can lower the booster. Because as it is at the moment, if I try and lower the booster, it doesn't really have any space because the column will be in the way. So I'm just going to relieve it a bit, drop it down, then I'll work out where the booster needs to go for the pedal height. We don't want to change the length of the throw, the length of the pedal arm, because it changes the advantage. So if you shorten the pedal, then you're going to have to put more pressure on it to make it work. I want to leave it, the ratio above the pin to below the pin, to the same. Now I can measure that and tell you what it is, just to give you an idea. So what I'm talking about there is, this is where the rod gets pushed into the booster. This is the swing or the pivot point on my pedal. So this here is a distance, and then from here down to the pedal is another distance. So if I go shortening the pedal, which I'm not going to do, but if I shorten the pedal, then it'd mean that I've got to put more effort in to get the booster to operate, to get the push rod to move in. So to give you an idea, that's about, from the center of this pin here to the center of the pivot point, it's about 70 millimeters, so a bit over 2.5 inches, a bit under 3 inches. And if I measure to, I don't know, the middle of the pedal, it's about 21, 22 centimeters, or 210, 220 millimeters. So this, the distance from here to here, is 3 times the distance from here to here, which means that I've got a mechanical advantage of 3 to 1. I've got 3 lots of 70 millimeters to 70 millimeters. So if I shorten it, then I won't have as much. Likewise, if I extended the pedal, then I would have more mechanical advantage. But I'm going to go on the fact that Holden designed this to be a good amount. So I'm not going to change the distance from there to there in comparison to the distance from there to there. I want to leave them the same. marked up, and that's what I'll cut out. A bit more light on the subject. Okay, so previously this shifter was actually, I had concerns that it was going to contact the rocker cover. Now I think I can still move it over here a bit further, and now I think that looks more like the factory position. And this is what I was talking about, the angle change. It actually comes down on one angle, then changes angle through here, and that's all fine. It appears to me it's clear, it's around everything. I think it looks good. The shift mechanism, I believe, if I was able to rotate that, is not going to hit anything, so I think it's solved a couple of problems, just as long as I've now got enough room to move that booster down the amount that I said that I need to, which based on that measurement we were talking before, I think it's 70 mil. So this was a 65 mil hole. I did have an afterthought. I'm going to lift the pedal up about 20 mil from where I said in the first place anyway, because I'll put sound deadener underlay and carpet in this, so that means that my foot will be sitting up about 20 mil higher than the bare metal floor, which means that I can afford to lift my pedal up about 20 mil. So I'm only going to drop this down 50 mil, which will I believe get me to the pedal height that I'm after. I measured down 50 mil from my original mounting point, which is the pencil line just up above the piece of tape, and I'll check that tape for straightness, but I think it's straight. Might just be an optical illusion. I measured down, and then the bottom of that piece of tape where the arrows are pointing, that's 50 mil below my original set out point for my template, which my template was based on the back of the booster, if you remember. So I'm going to transfer the whole template down 50 mil, and we'll mark it, cut it and so on. As you can see, I'm going to be falling into void space down there where the old column used to come through, and one of my holes, the bottom right hand hole as we're looking at this, is going to be just in mid-air. That's okay, be a plate there later, just to repeat myself. All that'll be rebuilt. This is just to get the position sorted. So I'll just sort of bang through this now, and then I'll bring you back once I've got that further ahead. Well, we'll see how the column fits, but I don't think I could ask for much better fit than that is at the moment. The inner guards are pretty much where they're going to be. Haven't finalised it, but there's clearance there. I could fit my hand sideways into that gap below the booster. There seems to be a good amount of clearance to the rocker cover, to the steering column. I think it looks like it's supposed to be there. Pretty happy with that. Looks like it's level. Obviously it's not completely tucked up in there yet because of the swage lines and so on, but it's sitting pretty well. And it's popping through the firewall there. So you can see it's sitting over to the right hand side of the steering column. So I'll be able to hang the pedal off it in a little while. Might tie the steering column up or something, try and get a position for it. But so far I'm pretty happy with it. Have to do a bit of refab on the firewall, which is no biggie. So I just threw a couple of nuts on the back of the booster. I got no washers, no reinforcing. If you haven't watched this before, please relax. I am going to reinforce the firewall. The booster will be mounted back to the dash. It will have a collapsible column, all that sort of stuff. So just in case you're new to this particular channel and this particular series of videos. So got the booster there. Now what I want to show you is the firewall, the flex in it as it is at the moment. If you can see the firewall buckling and wobbling there. Now that's not good. That can't stay that way. Hence why it really needs to be braced up. But I will repeat, I really like the position of this. I think it works really well. My PCV, not my PCV, my booster line to come across. Got the brake pipes. They must be in the right place because they keep getting in the way. So all those brake pipes and so on. I'm going to remake all the brake pipes, but again, test fit. So let's have a look in here. Just got the dash hanging up here off a bungee cord. I think that's good enough to stay there. If I could turn the steering wheel that way, I'd just leave it like that. Save me a lot of work. It's collapsible. Hey, engineer would be happy. Probably not. So, back of the booster, 3 nuts on the studs. You can see the push rod. Got the column. It's just sitting there, clearancing down the bottom there. Like I did was great. That really worked. So far, and I haven't sat in it because I haven't got a seat or anything, but I think the column angle looks okay. The shifter clearance could be a little bit of an issue, but again, if need be, a little bit of shaping around the column since I've got to make a panel there. Oh, sorry, around the dash. Since I've got to make a panel there, won't be a problem. I'll be happy with that. So we might grab the pedal and see how it looks just hanging from the booster at the moment. So I've just got everything sort of mocked in there at the moment. The brake pedal is hanging off the brake booster push rod. The push rod actually has a bend in it that can either bend up or bend down. I'm not sure which way it's meant to go or if it matters, but I'm sure someone can tell me. If not, then I'll work it out. So if you know, please let me know in a comment. So this part here, so if I take the pedal out here, just on the end here, it's a bit hard for me to show you, unless I move the camera over there, of course. There's a little bend in the end of it there. So again, if you know, please let me know. So at the moment I've got it pointing up, and I'll need to know this before I make up the mount for the pivot point here, because on one, when it's pointing up, the pedal sits up higher, and obviously when it's pointing down, the pedal will sit lower. So let's have a look. Got 110 mil there, which is good. As I said, I wanted 90. Allow for carpet and so on. I guess the pedal will probably sit about there. So yeah, that's about 110 mil to the bottom. It was 90 mil on my on Toxic, my Chev, so that's okay. This is the pedal, the accelerator pedal, so I may need to modify it a little bit to get it to work. but ultimately it should be okay. We've just got a screwdriver holding it into a bolt that's up there. So that's the mechanism there. So this holds onto the firewall, and that does that. So when you accelerate, it pulls forward, and this is the kick down. So this is for the transmission. So when you give it full boot, it'll kick the transmission down, it being an auto. So yeah, that'll sit wherever it'll sit. I don't mind if I have to modify the shape of this at all to work with the firewall. This part here I think is the more important part, the amount of mechanical advantage, the leverage effect. But any part of this I can modify around, without being too concerned about it. But yeah, the cable comes through the top part there, accelerate, and away she goes. So I'm really happy with the pedal. The column is sitting at a great height. It all looks good. Play around with all this mounting. As I said, this is the original Holden mounting point. That hole on the side there, I believe, is where the speedo cable comes through. Or it could be for a clutch. I don't know. If you know, tell me, because I don't know. I could either use the whole plate, or I could cut off the parts I don't need, whatever. But it will create the mount, the removable mount within the floor that will block out the dust and the water and the noise, which is what I want. If I hadn't mentioned before, this is the handbrake, the original handbrake. I'm going to use that. That's cool. I really like that. That's great. So, I'm going to go in for dinner now. It's Friday evening. I'm working on this after my day job. I've actually got a couple of weeks holidays now, so I'm going to bang through a few things on this, which is good. So the next thing I'm going to come to, hopefully tomorrow, as long as it's not raining, because I am outdoors, is I want to get this booster mounted up, probably get the plate sorted out, start sorting out for the steering column. I need to work out that whether that push rod goes up or down, so that shouldn't be too hard to find out. And once I know that, I think I can start putting this stuff together, and that's pretty exciting for me. And the reason being is that the motor works. I've got a fuel tank in it. I've just got to finish off some fuel pipes. If I put a battery to it, it'll start. And then if I can connect up the brake booster and the steering, then it will also steer and stop. Now again, I will rebuild everything, but if I can actually get this thing to turn, if I can get it to turn with the key, which I won't be able to, if I can hotwire it and then turn the wheels and use the brakes, that's a massive step forward. And I've got to say, this job hasn't taken that much work really, because I bought a chassis with an engine, transmission, tail shaft, diff and brakes in it, and so far I've mounted a body onto it, done some rust repairs, and I have done a steering column and a booster. This thing was that good, and I don't know if I used the radiator, but when it came, it actually already had a radiator mounted into it. It's not the right one, but it's a radiator. So should be a thing pretty soon. So gotta have dinner. Haven't gone in for dinner yet. I was actually just packing up, and I thought, I wonder if that latch for the bonnet will fit. Now I've just got that sitting there, so it's sitting out sort of 10 mil, 12 mil, because the bolts are there. I've got that sitting there, and I don't know, I reckon that's going to be very close to being able to fit. Now I haven't tried to put the bonnet down. It is rubbing on the booster at the moment, it can't do that. So perhaps when push comes to shove, when I actually do modify this firewall a little bit, I might be able to push the booster back 20 mil, however much I want really. I could actually sink it into the firewall a bit if I needed to, and if that gives me the clearance to be able to use those latches, that's going to happen. So I'm going to find more out about that tomorrow. So you'll see when I see tomorrow.